Some faces once seen refuse to fade from memory, not because of their beauty or horror, but because they awaken in us a strange, almost primal aversion, a sudden, inexplicable surge of contempt that feels righteous yet profoundly unsettling. Consider this archetype, the smug moralist whose every pronouncement exudes unearned virtue, yet whose actions betray subtle, undeniable hypocrisy, or the one whose fragile facade of unwavering optimism seems to mock the very idea of genuine human struggle, denying the shadow that clings to every soul. Perhaps it's the arrogant snob whose polish offends your sense of justice, or the manipulative charmer whose insincerity you can feel in the air. These figures, these archetypes, are not mere irritants. They are catalysts, igniting a quiet fury, a secret disdain that burns hotter than any public outrage. But what if I told you that the intensity of this aversion, this instinctive repulsion, isn't merely a judgment of their character, but a precise, unerring calibration of your own inner landscape? What if the very traits you find most repellent in them are in fact exiled fragments of your own being, crying out for recognition from the dungeons of your forgotten self? The contempt you feel isn't a pure surgical strike at an external flaw. It's the muffled cry of your own discarded potential, echoing back from the mirror of another's perceived imperfection. Every sneer, every flicker of disgust is a silent testament to the carefully constructed prison you've built around your own uncomfortable truths, around those parts of yourself deemed too raw, too dark, too dangerous to exist in the light of your conscious identity. Herein lies the paradox and a profound, unsettling truth. This very irritation that gnaws at your peace, this very judgment that clouds your vision, is not a burden to be shed, but a meticulously coded map. It's a compass pointing directly to the buried treasure of your authentic power, to an unlived life awaiting liberation. For at the heart of this repulsion, in the shadow of this contempt, lies the key to your wholeness, the missing fragment of your disparate self. The qualities you despise in others are often precisely those you have rejected within yourself, and it is in their return, in their integration, that true power and an unshakable sense of self-worth are forged. But why does this complex mechanism of projection and rejection operate with such unwavering precision? Why do we so readily cast off parts of ourselves only to encounter them distorted and magnified in the faces of those we judge? To truly grasp this profound dynamic, to understand the architecture of this internal exile, we must undertake a journey backward. We must return to the quiet, often forgotten moments when the first boundaries were drawn, when the first judgments were made, and when the seeds of separation were sown in the fertile soil of our earliest experiences. Imagine standing at the threshold of an ancient library where every dusty shelf holds not books, but echoes of your own past. We are not seeking other stories there, but the imprints of those moments when something within you, alive and authentic, was condemned to exile. If we are to understand the mechanism of projection discussed earlier, that inexplicable aversion to others' qualities that so persistently cries out about our own exiled parts, we must return to the origins, to a time when the inner map of your world was still fresh and the soil of your soul was pliable for the first deepest furrows. Recall, was there a moment in your life when the desire to win, healthy ambition, the urge to be first, suddenly seemed not just inappropriate, but shameful, when the expression of will, straightforwardness, the ability to assert your boundaries, what we call healthy aggression, was labeled rudeness, cruelty, an unacceptable trait. Perhaps it happened when your childlike impulse for self-expression, for loud laughter or spontaneous dance was met not with understanding, but with a judgmental gaze, a hissed quiet, or a phrase that branded itself onto your consciousness. That's not how one behaves. These moments are not just memories. They are notches on the trunk of yourself, marking the points where branches were severed, where the right to err, to stumble, to be imperfect was traded for the fear of rejection, where vulnerability, that most delicate fabric of true humanity, was hidden deep beneath a shell because the world around taught weakness is dangerous. Where authenticity, your unique melody, was drowned out by the chorus of others' expectations, because being yourself meant risking the loss of love, approval, or even safety. The shadow is not born evil. It only becomes so in exile. It is not a monster escaped from the abyss, but rather a child rejected for its natural expressions. Imagine a certain aspect of your personality, be it genuine ambition, a drive for leadership, or even the capacity for a profound, uncomfortable truth, manifesting for the first time. And in response to this impulse, instead of acceptance, there was a reaction. Perhaps it was your parents' fear for your future, their own unfulfilled ambitions projected onto you as warnings. Or perhaps it was a teacher who stifled your initiative, asserting that there's no need to stand out, or peers who mocked your openness, teaching you that sincerity is a weakness for which you get punished. This is how the first dungeons for your inner exiles were formed. Every "you mustn't," "it's shameful," "is bad," "is dangerous," became a brick in the wall, isolating these parts from conscious life. We ourselves striving for belonging, for love, for acceptance, unconsciously became the executioners of our own potentials. We believed that by renouncing these undesirable qualities, we would become more loved, more protected, more correct. We did not understand that by exiling them, we were not destroying them, but merely sending them underground, where they continued to live, gaining strength, distorting, and mutating in the darkness. It is there, in this internal exile, that the source of the inexplicable rage we feel towards those who dare to manifest our own rejected traits hides. For they, in their audacity to be themselves, remind us of our own betrayal, of how we once renounced a part of ourselves for the sake of apparent peace. The shadow is not merely the sum of rejected traits. It is a living, pulsating energy that has been deprived of its natural expression and now seeks an outlet, often through projections onto others. The process of exile was painful, but it seemed necessary for survival in the world at that time. However, what was a salvation in childhood becomes a prison in adulthood, depriving us of wholeness and authentic power. And as long as these parts remain imprisoned, they continue to demand their due, creating an internal tension that cannot be ignored. This is not merely a philosophical concept. It is a profound, energetic reality that demands resolution. Look within yourself at these invisible scars on your soul left by acts of self-renunciation. This is not an invitation to guilt, but to a deep understanding of how your inner map was formed and why certain roads on it were blocked. For only by realizing what exactly was exiled and why can we begin the process of reclaiming these lost fragments, a process that is not merely an act of will, but a profound necessity for achieving authentic selfhood. And this process has its universal laws and principles that manifest in each of us, regardless of personal history. The human psyche, in its intricate dance between light and shadow, often performs a silent, cruel ritual. Exile. Imagine a fragment of your own soul, vital and potent, deemed unsuitable for the sacred circle of your conscious self. It is banished, exiled to the desolate frontiers of your inner world, in perpetual banishment from the tribe of your accepted traits. This is not a fanciful metaphor, but the very forge in which our deepest inner conflicts are hammered out. From the earliest moments of our existence, under the watchful, often judgmental, gaze of our formative world, be it parents, peers, or societal norms, certain impulses, certain authentic expressions of power or vulnerability are deemed unacceptable. They are not merely suppressed, they are severed, amputated from the perceived whole, their very existence denied in the self-narrative we construct for survival. This act of internal exile, though born from a primal need for acceptance and security, ironically creates a profound internal schism. The energy once flowing freely through these now exiled aspects does not dissipate. It is merely redirected, becoming an underground current that gnaws at the foundations of our being, manifesting as inexplicable anxieties, chronic fatigue, or a persistent sense of unfulfillment. But what is exiled does not vanish. It merely accumulates like an unpaid debt accruing compound interest in the darkest vaults of your being. It is the energy of an unsettled account, a psychic current that left unaddressed will inevitably erupt, demanding reckoning. It manifests not as a whisper, but as a persistent ache, a subtle distortion in the fabric of our perception, a shadow that clings to our heels regardless of the brightest sun. The force required to constantly keep these parts in check, to maintain the illusion of an untouched, unblemished self, is immense, leaving us exhausted, often without understanding why. This self-imposed division creates an inner fortress designed for protection, but ultimately isolating us from our own innate power and authenticity. Recall the ancient Greek Furies, the Erinyes, chthonic deities born from the blood of Uranus, relentless in their pursuit of those who violate the natural order, especially those guilty of kinship murder. They know no rest. Their torment is ceaseless until atonement is made, until psychic balance is restored. So too do our exiled inner fragments, like these primal avengers, relentlessly pursue us. Their cries are not heard in the external world, but echo in the empty spaces of our anxieties, our inexplicable rages, our self-sabotage, and the magnetic pull toward the very qualities we most vehemently condemn in others. They are not malevolent entities seeking to destroy, but unrecognized parts yearning for reintegration, craving the wholeness that only recognition can bring. Their power stems precisely from our refusal to acknowledge them, to welcome them back into the fold. The longer they remain in exile, the more distorted, more potent, and often more destructive their manifestations become. They are not merely parts of us. They are us, crying out from the wilderness of our unconscious, demanding to be seen, heard, integrated. This universal principle, this relentless insistence of the unacknowledged, is the cornerstone of true self-knowledge. It is the understanding that the deepest resistances we encounter in the world are often merely echoes of battles we wage within. The people, the situations, the very archetypes that trigger our most irrational aversion are often the precise vectors through which these exiled parts attempt to communicate, to reclaim their rightful place. They are the unwitting messengers of our own neglected truths, sent to dismantle our carefully constructed facades and illuminate the path back to our authentic essence. For the path to genuine wholeness is paved not by suppressing what we deem undesirable, but by courageously reclaiming every exiled part of ourselves. It is in the stark reflection of our deepest antipathies that the contours of our unexplored self begin to emerge with unsettling clarity. If the exiles lurking in the depths of our being are like the ancient furies, relentlessly pursuing us until we turn our gaze upon them, then their whispers, their calls, most often reach us through the external world. It resonates in those people whose traits provoke in us not just dislike, but an irrational, burning hatred, contempt, or an inexplicable, almost physical irritation. This is not merely a clash of personalities. It is a reaction to a mirror that suddenly appears before us, reflecting something we were quick to turn away from within ourselves. Let us gaze upon the faces of these external demons that so fiercely awaken our inner exiles. The first face is the zealot of ambition. He is not just successful. He is the embodiment of an indefatigable drive to the top, an eternal climber whose conversations invariably revolve around achievements, status, conquest. His eyes burn with a hunger for recognition, and his words are infused with confidence in his right to all the world's blessings. And this is where a wave rises within you, not just of envy, but of deep, almost nauseating aversion. You see in him unscrupulousness, empty vanity, soulless calculation. Your inner self screams, how can one be like that? How can one so openly desire and take? This rejection is not of him, but of that part of you that once dreamt of more, of recognition, of power, but was driven into the shadow by fear of judgment, defeat, or loss of purity. The second face is the untamed voice. This is the one who dares to be loud, different, who isn't afraid to take up space, to speak their truth without prevarication, even if it's uncomfortable. They might be an artist whose art shocks, or a speaker whose words are sharp and uncompromising, or simply a person whose self-expression seems excessive, provocative, even brazen. Your reaction is uncontrolled irritation. How dare they be so conspicuous? It's just posturing. They clearly lack tact, the inner critic whispers, but this is not their cry, but your own suppressed voice, driven underground, denied the right to full amplitude of sound, to authentic, unfiltered self-expression. And the third is the open wound. This is the one who is not ashamed of their vulnerability, who asks for help, who openly expresses their sorrows, fears, or needs. In a world where strength is often associated with stoicism, they seem weak, overly emotional, even manipulative to you. You feel discomfort, a desire to pull away, and at times even contempt. Why can't they handle it themselves? It's just whining. But in this reaction lies your own exiled fear of being vulnerable, of being dependent, of being seen in your infirmity. It is that part of you that once allowed itself to be tender, needy, but was cruelly punished for it, and now wears a mask of impenetrable resilience. Allow me to offer you an image that etched itself into my memory. I knew a woman, an artist whose canvases burned with wild, untamed energy. Her presence was a manifesto in itself, vibrant, fierce, often dissonant with the muted tones of polite society. She spoke without prevarication, laughed with an infectious, almost defiant jubilation that echoed through quiet rooms. My initial reaction was cold, sharp, judgmental. How vulgar, I thought. How desperately attention-seeking. How utterly lacking in subtlety. A wave of irritation ran through me. Yet beneath this veneer of contempt, a strange, almost painful longing stirred. It was a yearning for the very freedom I so fiercely condemned in her, for that uninhibited courage to simply be without apology or compromise. Her audacious brushstrokes, her unrestrained voice, her defiant laughter, they were not mere external provocations. They were shattered mirrors reflecting the timid, carefully locked away parts of myself, the impulses to express, to challenge, to simply exist loudly, which I had long exiled for fear of judgment. These figures, these demons onto whom we project, are not mere external irritants. They are distorted echoes of what we ourselves have exiled deep within. Each of them holds a key to a locked room within our own being. And within each of these vices that so repel us lies not just a shadow, but a certain power, a certain resource which, when reclaimed from exile, is capable of transforming us. The labyrinth of the self holds its first secrets. The specters that haunt your periphery are merely reflections of your own exiled fragments. But what if these shadows, these distorted, echoing manifestations of humanity are not merely vices to be cast out, but valuable resources, strengths, warped by neglect and fear? Imagine each demon as a key forged in the fire of your early rejections, now rusted and twisted, yet still holding the potential to unlock the innermost chambers of your own being. That moralist whose righteous indignation once repelled you carries an untarnished sword of discernment. It is the capacity for unshakable integrity, the right to stand firm on your own foundation of values, to declare without apology what is true and just for you. You exiled the very conviction that could have fortified your soul amidst the shifting sands of compromise. The snob whose disdainful gaze once pricked your skin conceals a magnificent awareness of inherent worth. This is not the empty pride of ego, but the quiet, sovereign right to acknowledge your own dignity, to set standards of excellence that elevate rather than diminish. By exiling this part of yourself, you forfeited the crown of your own magnificence, settling for less than your true stature. Recall the manipulative charmer whose silky promises seemed a trap. Within this distorted art lies a powerful alchemy of influence, a magnetic force of persuasion, a profound ability to touch hearts and minds, to craft narratives that inspire and connect. You denied yourself the exquisite power to shape your world, to lead, to inspire, mistakenly equating authenticity with artifice. Then there's the zealot of ambition, whose relentless drive seemed a brutal assault. Yet this very intensity is an untamed force of will, a soaring aspiration that moves mountains, the sacred right to pursue your highest vision without apology or hesitation. By exiling this divine hunger, you condemned yourself to a life of muted potential, forever tethered to the shore of what might have been. And the untamed voice, that unrestrained torrent of truth that society taught you to suppress, This is the primal roar of healthy aggression, the courage to set boundaries, the fierce right to define your space, to express your deepest truth without filters or fear. You silence the very instrument of your authenticity, leaving an echo where a symphony should have resounded. Finally, the open wound, that raw vulnerability you so diligently concealed. This is not weakness, but a profound wellspring of empathy, the capacity for genuine connection, the sacred right to feel deeply, to allow your heart to break open, transforming pain into wisdom and compassion. By sealing this wound, you severed a vital artery of human experience, condemning yourself to a sterile existence devoid of true intimacy. Each of these exiles, once deemed a vice, is a vital fragment of your wholeness, a suppressed power awaiting reclamation. To deny them is to live an amputated life, constantly striving for a completeness that remains elusive because you have cast aside the very pieces necessary to complete the mosaic of your being. However, this path of reintegration presents us with a profound paradox. The very fear of embodying these reclaimed aspects often dictates our choices, subtly yet powerfully diverting our path from the authentic self. Our previous contemplation unveiled the exiled fragments of ourself, those qualities cast into inner darkness, only to reappear as distorted reflections in others. We spoke of tireless ambition, the untamed voice, the gaping open wound, archetypes which, however repellent they seemed, held keys to dormant powers. But what happens when this internal exile persists, when the mere thought of reclaiming these exiled aspects sends a shiver, a primal fear of becoming the very monster that was once merely a projection? This fear, subtle yet pervasive, often dictates the very trajectory of our lives, leading us away from the path of genuine individuation. Consider the one who, recoiling from the perceived ruthlessness of the zealot of ambition, consciously or unconsciously suppresses their own drive. Their path to self-actualization becomes an uncertain dance marked by missed opportunities, unfulfilled potential, and a pervasive sense of lack. They choose the path of least resistance, not out of a desire for peace, but from a dread of embodying what they deem unworthy. The self, yearning for full expression, remains shackled, its wings clipped by the phantom of projected vice. Or observe the one who avoids the untamed voice in a panic, fearing to become harsh, confrontational, or disagreeable. They construct a facade of perpetual agreement, a chameleon-like adaptability that erodes their authentic core. Boundaries blur, desires remain unvoiced, and beneath the seemingly serene surface, resentment brews. This constant suppression of healthy aggression, that very energy needed for self-assertion, for saying no, for defending one's truth, leads not to harmony, but to inner fragmentation. Authenticity, the bedrock of the individuated self, crumples under the weight of unexpressed truth. And what of the open wound, that exposed vulnerability that causes such discomfort in those who have long built emotional walls around themselves? The fear of being seen, truly seen, in one's imperfection, one's sorrow, one's longing, often leads to a life lived behind an emotional fortress. Connections remain superficial, intimacy eludes, and the profound human experience of shared vulnerability, the crucible for deep empathy and genuine belonging, is sacrificed on the altar of apparent strength. This denial of one's own capacity to feel, to be tender, ultimately impoverishes the self, leaving it isolated and incomplete. In each instance, the question echoes, how does your deep aversion to these shadow figures, the very qualities you sought to banish from your inner realm, compel you to make choices that subtly yet inexorably undermine your pursuit of wholeness and authentic self-expression? This is not mere discomfort. It is a strategic retreat from those aspects of yourself which, when integrated, would empower you on your journey. Here arises a common whisper, a tremor of apprehension. But if I embrace these aspects, won't I become the very thing I despise? Will integrating my aggression turn me into a tyrant and my vulnerability into a perpetual victim? This is the crucial misconception, the fear that holds many captive within their self-imposed limitations. To integrate the shadow is not to unleash chaos or surrender to destructive impulses. It means rather reclaiming the energy and resource dormant within these rejected parts. It means bringing consciousness to what was once unconscious, transforming raw instinct into conscious choice. Healthy aggression, which allows for boundary setting, is distinct from uncontrolled rage. Authentic vulnerability, which fosters connection, is light years away from self-pity. The drive for mastery is not synonymous with ruthless ambition. Integration is a process of discernment, of refining crude ore into pure gold. It is the conscious mastery of your entire inner landscape, rather than its subjugation to exiled, unrecognized inhabitants. It is a courageous act of expanding the boundaries of your conscious self to encompass all that you are, not just what you deem acceptable. However, the path to wholeness holds yet another fascinating paradox, for not all shadows are cast from the darkness of rejected flaws. Sometimes the most powerful projections are born from a brilliance we refuse to claim as our own. If until now we have spoken of shadows cast by fear and aversion, of those aspects of ourselves exiled to the dim corners of the soul for their perceived vice or danger, today our gaze will turn to a different kind of exile, to a radiance that blinds. There exists not only a dark shadow, but also a golden one. This is not that which is cast off, but that which is bestowed, not that which is hated, but that which is deified. Consider for a moment. Recall those whose names you speak with reverence, whose talent, wisdom, charisma, unyielding will, or radiant serenity seem unattainable to you. Who is your unspoken idol in the realm of self-realization, spiritual quest, creativity, or human greatness? It might be a philosopher whose words penetrate the very core of existence, an artist whose creations are breathtaking, or a leader whose inner strength can move mountains. We look at them and say, wow, I wish I could do that. We admire, revere, and sometimes even deify them. Yet, in this act of admiration, in this projection of light onto the external world, we unconsciously deprive ourselves of our own wholeness. For the golden shadow is the radiance of our own soul, the dormant talents, unrealized abilities, and potential for greatness that we, for some reason, have not acknowledged within ourselves. Instead of seeing them as sparks of our own inner fire, we perceive them as an external light belonging to someone else. We bestow our own crowns and robes upon those we place on a pedestal, leaving ourselves on the ground in the shadow of their unattainable greatness. This expulsion isn't born of a fear of judgment, as with the dark shadow, but perhaps from humility, self-doubt, a habit of self-deprecation, or a cultural narrative that teaches being too bright is improper or even dangerous. Sometimes we fear our own power, our potential, because recognizing it brings responsibility, demands stepping out of our comfort zone, and possibly confronting others' expectations. We are afraid to shine, and so we project our brilliance onto others. Every time you admire someone's wisdom, ask yourself, what part of me yearns for this knowledge, this depth of understanding, but I suppress it? When you are captivated by someone's charisma, consider, what capacity for influence, inspiration, or being at the center of attention have I given away to this person, believing it to be theirs? When someone's creative freedom amazes you, recognize, what unique form of self-expression have I locked away within, afraid to let it see the light? These questions are not a reproach, but a key to understanding that the qualities you so value in others already exist within you. They are not alien. They are yours. They are waiting for you to stop viewing them through the lens of projection and instead recognize them as an integral part of yourself. These gifts you have given to your idols are in fact your unrealized possibilities, your unbloomed flowers, your unsung symphonies. Integrating the golden shadow is not about appropriating others' achievements, but about reclaiming your own. It is an act of inner sovereignty where you take back your power, your brilliance, your capacity to be who you were born to be. It is recognizing that you are not merely an audience member in the theater of others' accomplishments, but an actor capable of playing the lead role in your own life. By relinquishing these projections, you cease to be a pale shadow of another's greatness and begin to shine with your own unique light. It is in this reclamation of both exiled monsters and exiled gods that the path to genuine wholeness lies. This path requires not only awareness, but also active steps that will allow you to regain what you long considered foreign. We've discussed shadows, those exiled fragments whispering from the subconscious, and the golden radiance of unrecognized potential that we project onto others. But what if we view this not as a burden, but as the greatest act of reclamation? Every projection, be it burning aversion or blind adoration, is essentially energy given away outwardly. These are parts of your own self, scattered across the world like seeds awaiting return to their native soil. True wholeness, authentic individuation begins the moment you consciously decide to reclaim this power, this resource, this untapped potential. This is not merely accepting the dark side. It is a deep alchemical transformation where instinct becomes conscious choice, chaos becomes ordered energy, and the suppressed becomes a source of unprecedented power. Imagine your inner space as a garden with neglected corners you feared to explore and lush groves whose fruits you attributed to others' labor. The return begins with a single step. Choose one person, one figure, real or fictional, who evokes a strong, almost irrational reaction in you. This could be someone you utterly despise, whose image causes disgust or anger, or conversely, someone you idolize, whose qualities seem unattainable to you. Now, in silence, take a piece of paper or open a blank document. Step 1, observation. Without judgment or analysis, simply describe 3 to 5 specific qualities or traits of this person that evoke such a strong response in you. Be completely honest. Perhaps it's their unapologetic ambition, their unveiled vulnerability, their ability to be the center of attention, or what you perceive as their fierce egoism. Step 2, reflection. Ask yourself, where might these qualities exist within me? In what form do they manifest, or could they manifest if I allowed them to? For negative projections, what am I running from when I see this in another? What part of myself have I rejected to avoid being like that? For positive projections, what part of my own greatness do I fail to recognize, projecting it onto this person? What potential lies dormant within me, awaiting awakening? Step 3, reclamation. This is not a call to become like them. It's a call to reclaim energy. Imagine these qualities like prodigal children returning to you. You don't have to love them, but you can acknowledge their existence and their potential. How can this ambition be transformed into healthy drive? How can vulnerability become a source of strength and authenticity? How can egoism be reinterpreted as healthy self-respect? Note how these energies, once accepted, can enrich your life, granting you new opportunities for expression and action. This exercise is merely a gateway into a space where there are no exiles, where all parts of the self are invited to the table. For only when every facet of your being is recognized and integrated does authentic freedom emerge. This inner alchemy, the process of individuation, does not conclude with merely achieving inner wholeness. It inevitably transforms how we interact with the world, build relationships, and express ourselves in society, opening new horizons for our existence.